My son invited me to a reconciliation dinner. I was driving to meet him with hope in my heart when a call from my lawyer shattered everything. Call me immediately. It's about your son. What I heard broke me inside. Before we go further, please subscribe to the channel and comment what time it is where you are. The front door slammed so hard my coffee cup shook against its saucer. Heavy footsteps crossed the porch, loud and angry, making the old boards creak. I had just set down my evening paper when Wayne stormed in without knocking. "Dad, I need money right now. Sell this house and give me my share. No greeting. No." Apology, only demands, filled with a desperation I had never seen in my son. His face was red, his suit wrinkled, as if he had been pacing in his car before gathering the courage to rush in. I stood from my chair and motioned toward the kitchen with calmness. "Wayne, you seem upset. Let me make you some coffee and we can—" "I don't want your coffee." He waved his hand sharply, nearly hitting the lamp. "I want answers. I want what's mine." "Your share?" My words came out harsher than I intended. My hand shook slightly as I gripped the chair. "This is my house, Wayne. I worked my whole life for it." He laughed bitterly, the sound echoing through the room. "You'll die soon anyway. Why do you need this big house?" His cruelty hit me like a blow. This was my son, the boy I taught to ride a bike, the man I walked beside at his wedding, and now he stood here telling me I was already gone. "Wayne." I tried to reach for the son I once knew, but he cut me off, slamming his fist against the coffee table so hard the wood shook. "You're selfish. Emily and I have expenses you can't even imagine. Real problems. Not just sitting here all day reading like someone useless. Get out." The words came quiet but firm. Wayne froze mid-sentence, stunned. I said, "Get out of my house." I pointed to the door, my hand steady despite the anger boiling inside me. "And don't step foot here again." For a moment he looked shocked. Maybe he expected me to surrender, to hand him everything. His face shifted from confusion to anger to something darker. "You'll regret this, old man. When you're lying alone in some nursing home, remember you chose this." He stormed out, the door slamming even louder than when he came in. From the window I saw him march to his black BMW, rev the engine and speed off, leaving black marks on the driveway. Stood in the silence, my chest pounding. The house felt changed, poisoned by his presence. Outside, dusk settled over Maple Street as the streetlights flickered on. My legs felt weak, so I dropped back into my chair. The newspaper lay scattered on the floor. My coffee had gone cold. Locked the front door, something I rarely did. My hand rested on the cool lock as I tried to process what had just happened. The silence felt heavy, almost suffocating. I walked slowly across the floor Margaret and I had refinished 20 years. Earlier, everything looked the same, yet nothing felt familiar anymore. I stopped at the fireplace, where family photos lined the mantel. Wayne's graduation picture stared back at me, his proud smile on the day he was accepted to Ohio State. I had worked double shifts to pay that tuition. I touched the silver frame. 42 years I gave him everything: college, his first car, help with the mortgage when he and Emily bought their first home. I picked up another photo, Wayne's wedding day, his arm around Emily, both glowing with happiness. I had paid half. The wedding cost, $15,000, money saved for my own retirement, gladly given so he would have the perfect day. I sank back into my worn leather chair, Margaret's last Christmas gift before cancer took her. She had saved for months, paying bit by bit until it was hers to give. On the side table was another photo, our 35th anniversary. Margaret's smile warm, her gray hair perfectly styled. Margaret, if only you could see what our son has become. But could you? Were there signs I overlooked? I tried to recall when Wayne began to change. Was it after you passed away, or had the shift been so gradual that I simply refused to face it? I began tallying in my head, the way I always did back in my engineering days. His college, $68,000 in total, His wedding, my $15,000 contribution. A $25,000 loan for his first house's down payment, never repaid. Another $30,000 for the business he launched. Then countless other expenses. Emergencies, car repairs, birthdays, Christmas. Over 2 decades, I had given Wayne more than $200,000. Not loans, gifts. Money I handed over because he was my son. Because I loved him. Because I wanted him to succeed. And last night, he stood in this very room, not asking, but demanding more. As though my work, my home, my security, meant nothing compared to the hole he had dug for himself. I thought I had raised a good man. Where did I go wrong? That question kept echoing as I sat in the growing darkness. Outside, the neighborhood carried on as usual, the Hendersons' dog barking, the distant sound of the Patels' television. Inside, silence, and the weight of betrayal I was still trying to understand. The grandfather clock in the hall struck 8. Margaret had inherited it from her mother, and for 43 years it had kept time faithfully, steady, reliable, everything Wayne no longer was. I leaned back, closing my eyes. Tomorrow, I would need to think clearly, to decide what this confrontation meant for my future. But tonight, all I could do was sit with the painful truth that the son I had loved unconditionally now saw me as little more than an obstacle to his inheritance. The house creaked as it settled into night. Morning passed quietly. I made my usual breakfast, 2 eggs over easy, wheat toast, black coffee, and read the Columbus Dispatch cover to cover. Routine steadied me after yesterday's eruption. I even tended to my herb garden on the patio, checking the early spring shoots just breaking. The soil. Now at my kitchen table, I sipped coffee and worked on a crossword, clinging to some sense of normalcy. Sunlight filtered through the lace curtains Margaret had hung years ago, scattering soft patterns across the oak table. When the phone rang, I glanced at the caller ID, Wayne. My stomach tightened. I let it ring twice more, hand hovering. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to protect the boundary I had set last night. But another part, the father in me, couldn't. Hello, Dad. I want to apologize for yesterday. I was wrong. His tone was different, softer, contrite. I straightened in my chair. Wayne, what happened? You never apologize. A pause. Then his voice carried something that sounded like real shame. I realized I was being selfish. The things I said about you, about the house. I'm ashamed. I stared out the window at Mrs. Patterson's roses, trying to process. In all, these years I could count on one hand the times Wayne had admitted he was wrong. I don't know, son. You said terrible things. I know. I did. I've been under pressure, but that's no excuse. You didn't deserve it. Please, let me make it right. Dinner? My treat. The refectory. 7 o'clock. My fingers tapped the table. It felt too convenient, almost rehearsed. And yet this was what I had longed for in the silence of last night, that my son still had a conscience somewhere under his desperation. Please, Dad, give me one chance. Let me prove I can be the son you raised me to be. The refectory. He knew it was my favorite. Margaret and I had celebrated every anniversary there during the last decade of her life. He was pulling every emotional string. Maybe that meant something. Maybe it meant he remembered what mattered to me. I looked at the empty chair across the table where Margaret once sat. The loneliness pressed in. The meals eaten alone. The small daily moments unshared. All right, I heard myself say. But this is your last chance. Thank you, Dad. Thank you. 7 o'clock. You won't regret it. After I hung up, I sat for a long time. The crossword unfinished, the coffee cold. Outside, the afternoon sun moved slowly across the sky, but the rhythm of my day had shifted. I wanted to believe Wayne's apology was real. That yesterday had been his lowest point, and now he was ready to rise. but a voice in the back of my mind whispered doubt. I walked to the calendar on the fridge. Tuesday, March 11th. I circled the date in red, not knowing why. Perhaps because I sensed this dinner would be decisive, whether Wayne had truly changed or whether another betrayal still waited. I set the phone down and headed upstairs. His apology had sounded more genuine than anything in years. Maybe people really could change. Maybe this was his turning point. In the mirror, I studied my reflection. The man looking back seemed older, worn by recent days. Gray stubble shadowed my face. Tonight called for better. I lathered shaving cream, each stroke of the razor cutting away not only whiskers but tension. This dinner mattered. If Wayne was ready to make amends, I had to meet him halfway. At the closet, I considered my suits. Navy or charcoal gray, both pressed. I chose navy. Margaret had always said it brightened my eyes, made me look distinguished. If we were starting over, I wanted to look my best. The ritual of dressing felt almost ceremonial. Crisp white shirt, tie carefully knotted. On the dresser sat Margaret's jewelry box, holding the silver cufflinks her parents had given me at our wedding. 2 ties lay across the bed, burgundy and blue. Burgundy matched my pocket square, but blue was Margaret's choice. "It makes you look trustworthy," she used to say. Tonight, I chose trust. From the dresser, I picked up the small bottle of cologne she had given me for our 25th anniversary. 1 spray, and I was back in 1982, Margaret laughing as I tried to act surprised by the gift I'd already seen her wrap. "For special occasions," she had said, kissing my cheek. And tonight, it felt like one of them. Tonight carried its own complicated weight. I dabbed a little cologne on my wrists and neck. Margaret would have been glad to see us together again. She always believed in second chances, in the power of redemption. "People make mistakes, Columbus," she used to say, especially after tough days with young Wayne. "What matters is if they learn from them." My wallet rested on the nightstand, filled with the pension check I had cashed yesterday. There was more than enough for dinner at the refectory, even if I insisted on paying despite Wayne's offer. Old habits are hard to break, and I had been covering bills for my children all their lives. With keys in hand, I checked the mirror one last time. The man staring back looked decent, composed, and ready to give his son another chance. Perhaps I had been too harsh with Wayne. People do change. Tonight could be the beginning of a new chapter for us. As I walked toward the bedroom door, I felt something I hadn't since Margaret's passing: hope. Genuine hope that our family could heal, that yesterday's harsh words could be forgiven. Wayne was still my son, no matter his mistakes. And fathers, I thought, owe their sons the benefit of doubt. I reached for the light switch, ready to head downstairs and drive to what I hoped would be a moment of reconciliation. I picked up my coat by the front door when my phone vibrated in my pocket. The sound cut through my mood like a sharp blade. For a second, I almost ignored it. Surely it could wait until after dinner. But something made me pause, my hand halfway through the sleeve. The notification showed a message from Robert. "Call me urgently." My fingers felt clumsy as I dialed. Robert never used exclamation marks, never wrote urgent messages unless something was truly wrong. The phone rang twice before his familiar voice answered. "Robert, what happened? Why the urgency?" "Columbus," he said. "Your son Wayne came to my office today. He asked about your will." The words struck me cold. I leaned against the hallway wall, my tie suddenly choking me. What exactly did he want to know? "He asked if everything would go to him or if Loretta had a share," Robert replied carefully. Then he asked about contesting the will. Contest. But why? My voice sounded strange, hollow. Through the window, I saw the Hendersons walking their dog, following the same routine they'd kept for years. Everything outside looked calm, while my world tilted. Columbus. I think Wayne. is planning something. Be careful tonight. I pressed my free hand to the wall for balance. The cologne Margaret once gave me now smelled heavy, suffocating. Are you sure? Maybe he just wanted clarity. No, Robert said. He asked about mental competency. He wanted to know what happens if someone claimed you weren't of sound mind when you signed. Sound mind. The phrase echoed inside me as puzzle pieces fit together. Yesterday's outburst over money, today's sudden apology, the dinner invitation at a public place where my behavior could be observed. My reflection stared back from the hallway mirror, and old man in a blue tie, preparing for dinner with a son who might be plotting to have him declared unfit. The hope I carried dissolved, replaced with something cold and firm. What should I do? I asked, though part of me already knew. Don't go. Stay home. I'll handle it legally. But I was already shaking my head. Wayne thought he could. Manipulate me, treat me like a weak old man. He was mistaken. No, I said firmly. I'll go, but I won't eat or drink a thing until I know what he's planning. Columbus, please. I've faced worse than my own son, Robert. But thank you for warning me. After hanging up, I stood in the hallway, studying my reflection. The man in the mirror was no longer hopeful. This was the Columbus who had survived Korea, who had built bridges still carrying traffic decades later, who had buried his wife and carried on. If Wayne wanted to test his father, he would learn quickly, or perhaps Robert was wrong. Maybe Wayne only wanted to understand his inheritance. I drove on, the streetlights flashing green. A young woman sped past in a red sports car, no doubt seeing me as just another cautious old driver. She wasn't wrong, but tonight my caution had a deeper purpose. At the next red light, I spotted a homeless man with a cardboard sign. I wondered what choices or betrayals had led him there. I handed him $5 from my wallet, and he thanked me warmly before moving on. At least someone benefited from my evening preparations. I continued down familiar streets, the corner store where I bought newspapers, the pharmacy where I collected my medicine, the barber shop I had visited for 30 years. This was my city, my life, my pattern. Wayne thought he could just lay claim to it. He was wrong. I would stay alert. No food, no drink, until I knew his intentions. The decision felt solid. Wayne might have a plan, but I had spent a lifetime calculating risks and structures. I could handle this. As I turned onto East Broad, the refectory's sign came into view. The old church-turned restaurant stood tall, Gothic and beautiful, yet oddly foreboding in the dusk. Margaret and I had celebrated anniversaries there, back when family felt unshakable. Traffic slowed as I reached the restaurant district. Workers drove home, couples arrived for dates, families gathered for evening meals, ordinary people, unaware that a father nearby was preparing to confront his son's betrayal. I signaled into the lot, my pulse steady. Whatever Wayne planned, I would face it. The hopeful father who dressed carefully upstairs was gone. In his place sat a man who knew that trust was now a luxury. But even if Wayne had forgotten what it meant to be a son, I would still remain his father. I parked in the restaurant's lot and paused for a moment, watching families and couples make their way inside. Ordinary people, living ordinary lives, unaware of any hidden dangers around them. The restaurant, once a Gothic church, appeared welcoming in the soft evening light, its stained glass windows glowing warmly. Wayne and Emily stood near the entrance, their faces brightening with what looked like genuine joy when they saw me. Wayne rushed forward, pulling me into an embrace, so different from his sharp tone just 2 days earlier. Dad, I'm so glad you came. I've been thinking about our relationship all day. Emily joined in, smiling warmly as she took my arm. Mr. Lane, you look wonderful. Wayne regrets yesterday deeply. Their enthusiasm felt almost excessive, yet in that moment, surrounded by classical music and the quiet hum of other diners, Robert's warnings seemed far away. I want us to have a better relationship, son, Wayne said, leading us to a window table with a view of the city skyline. Emily helped me settle in, showing unusual concern for my comfort. The waitress arrived instantly. "We already ordered wine," Wayne explained, pointing to a bottle of Cabernet breathing on the table. "Your favorite, the one Margaret loved." Emily poured it smoothly into my glass. "This will be perfect." "For a reconciliation toast," she said. I raised my glass, touched by their effort. They had remembered Margaret's wine and chosen the table where we once celebrated anniversaries. "Perhaps I had misjudged Wayne." "To family," Wayne said. "To second chances," Emily added warmly. The wine tasted just as I remembered, smooth, rich with hints of cherry and oak Margaret used to point out. Wayne spoke with the ease of the son I once knew, the boy who helped me build a treehouse, who called every week during college. Emily offered me bruschetta, reminding me it had always been my favorite here. Course after course followed, each one tied to memories. Wayne carved the prime rib himself, placing the best cuts on my plate. Emily kept my glass full, urging me to try the steak the chef had prepared, especially for you. The flavors were perfect, tender, seasoned, served with a sauce Emily carefully spooned over each portion. Together they recalled vacations, Christmas mornings, and moments I had almost forgotten. Emily spoke of their hopes for children and their wish to be close in my later years. By dessert, my doubts had faded. This felt like family again, broken but healing. Robert's warning seemed unnecessary, like paranoia from his years of handling troubled families. Wayne paid the bill, brushing aside my attempt to help. "Tonight is on me, Dad. My apology." The cool March air outside carried the promise of spring. They hugged me tightly, Wayne's hand firm on my shoulder. "Let's do this again soon." Driving home, windows down, I felt hopeful for the first time in months. I even stopped at a store to buy Wayne's favorite coffee, planning to invite him for breakfast later in the week. Back at the house, I felt at peace. The place no longer felt like a fortress after yesterday's arguments. Settling into my chair with the evening news, I was content. Later, I brewed chamomile tea and considered calling Robert to tell him he was wrong. That's when nausea struck. At first mild, like a heavy meal, but soon it became sharp, cramping. Pain that bent me over. Something was wrong, seriously wrong. I staggered to the sink, fighting waves of dizziness. Violent vomiting followed, leaving me weak and trembling. My mind raced back to the wine, the food Emily insisted I try, the sauce she kept adding. Robert's warning echoed. I suspect Wayne is planning something. Hands shaking, I reached for the phone, barely able to press the numbers. What's your emergency? I think I've been poisoned. 1247 Maple Street. What symptoms? Severe stomach pain, vomiting, dizziness. I ate dinner. A spasm cut me off. Sir, stay conscious. Help is on the way. The phone slipped from my hand as darkness closed in. One thought cut through the pain. My own son had tried to kill me. Sirens grew louder outside. Lights flashed across the walls. Fire and EMS rushed in, their heavy steps filling the house. A paramedic knelt beside me, steady and calm. "Mr. Lane, can you hear me? We're taking you to the hospital." As they lifted me onto the stretcher, I glimpsed my reflection in the hallway mirror. A pale man, aged by a single night, but with eyes burning with new clarity. The ambulance sped toward Mount Carmel East Hospital, carrying me away from the home where I had trusted blindly for too long. When I woke again, monitors beeped steadily. Sunlight cut through blinds across sterile white sheets. An IV dripped beside me. My body was weak, but memory was sharp. Dinner, betrayal, and near death. "Mr. Lane, you're awake." A doctor entered, a woman in her 50s, gray hair tied. Back, intelligent eyes full of both skill and compassion. "How are you feeling? You were brought in critical condition last night." "What happened to me, doctor?" I asked. "I'm Dr. Patel, your attending physician." We had been running tests all night. She pulled a chair close to the bed, moving carefully, as if preparing for a difficult conversation. The results show a strange substance in your blood. Ricin. It's a plant-based poison made from castor. Beans. The word struck like a physical blow. Ricin. Not food poisoning or a random illness, deliberate murder. But how? The pieces began to connect with grim clarity. My own son had tried to kill me. Dr. Patel raised his eyebrows slightly. Mr. Lane, if you believe this was intentional, you must contact the police right away. This is a criminal matter. I remembered reading about ricin years ago in engineering journals, case studies of accidents. Highly toxic, nearly impossible to detect, and almost untreatable once symptoms appeared. Wayne had clearly done his research. How serious is it, doctor? You were fortunate. The dose suggests someone wanted to make you extremely ill, perhaps fatally so. But because you received treatment quickly, your chances of recovery are strong. With proper care. Most victims survive. Most. The word carried weight, pointing to those who didn't. Dr. Patel continued in a calm, clinical tone. Ricin usually takes several hours to show symptoms, which matches your timeline. Initial treatment focuses on flushing the poison and managing side effects. There's no antidote. I closed my eyes, struggling to absorb the scale of Wayne's betrayal. Just yesterday I was a father hoping to reconcile with his troubled son. Today I was a survivor of attempted murder. The police will need evidence, your medical records, and details about when and where you think this happened. Evidence, the restaurant, the carefully prepared meal, Wayne insisting I try everything, Emily watching my wine glass, their performance of welcoming me back into the family. How long before I can leave? Another day or two. We need to monitor your kidneys and make sure all traces of the poison are gone. After Dr. Patel left, I lay staring at the ceiling, facing a brutal truth. My son, the boy I had taught to play baseball, whose education I had funded, whose wedding I had supported, had tried to murder me for money. The family I had once grieved and longed to reconcile with no longer existed. In their place stood cold, calculating people who saw me only as an obstacle. Wayne believed I was weak. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The taxi dropped me at the Columbus Police Department on Maroney Boulevard. Under my arm, I carried a manila envelope containing Dr. Patel's discharge papers and medical records, evidence that would put Wayne where he belonged. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I approached the front desk. I need to report an attempted murder, I said, my voice steady. 15 minutes later, I sat across from Detective Sarah Mitchell in a small interview room that smelled of coffee and disinfectant. She looked to be in her mid-40s, her graying hair tied back, her sharp eyes already signaling she took the case seriously. Mr. Lane, please describe what happened. I spread the hospital documents on the scratched metal table. The toxicology report showed ricin levels high enough to kill a younger or untreated person. My son invited me to dinner after we argued, on Monday. Now I know it was a trap. Detective Mitchell studied the papers, jotting notes in her leather pad. Her expression stayed professional, but I could see the concern building. Are you certain the poisoning happened at the restaurant? Absolutely. Wayne pushed me to eat that dish and drink that wine. Emily kept topping up my glass and urging me to try more food. It was coordinated. I explained everything. The heated argument, Robert's warning about Wayne's legal inquiries, Tuesday's invitation, and the carefully staged dinner. The poison was probably in the sauce, I added, recalling Emily's insistence. And the wine. They worked together to make sure I consumed enough. Detective Mitchell leaned back, tapping her pen. Mr. Lane, this is clearly a case of attempted murder. We'll need to arrest your son and his wife. The words gave me a deep sense of relief. Justice. Wayne has been drowning in debt from failed cryptocurrency investments. He even asked my lawyer about my will and whether it could be contested if I were declared incompetent. That proves motive. Agreed, the detective replied. With your statement and the medical evidence, we can issue warrants immediately. She explained the process. Arrest, custody, and review by a prosecutor. If the case went to trial, I would need to testify. They thought you were vulnerable, she said, but they miscalculated. By 4 p.m., my statement was recorded, the evidence logged. Detective Mitchell walked me to the lobby and shook my hand firmly. Mr. Lane, we take these cases very seriously, especially when family members target the elderly. Your son and daughter-in-law will be in custody tonight. I stepped out into the late afternoon sun, feeling lighter than I had in months. The wheels of justice were finally turning. 2 days later, Wayne and Emily were arrested at their suburban home, led away in handcuffs as neighbors watched. The news spread quickly. Son attempts to poison father for inheritance. Calls from relatives and reporters flooded in, but I ignored them. I had unfinished business. Robert's law office, filled with shelves of legal books, had been my place of trust for 15 years. Today, he would help me secure my future. Columbus, are you certain you want to exclude Wayne from the will completely? I sat across from him at the mahogany table, the new will open before us, its language clear. It would remove Wayne from every cent he had expected to inherit. Absolutely, I said. A person who once tried to kill me will never receive a cent. Robert adjusted his glasses as he carefully reviewed the document again. For over an hour, we had gone through every detail: my assets, savings, insurance policies, and pension funds. Everything would go to Loretta, the house on Maple Street, the retirement account Margaret and I built over 4 decades, and every possession I had, all of it was assigned to her. Loretta had always been a devoted daughter, never asking for more than simple gifts for her children's birthdays. She had no idea about Wayne's arrest yet, and I chose to wait until after the trial to tell her. The truth alone would be painful. Enough without the sudden shock of great wealth. Robert leaned back in his chair, studying me as he had done countless times before with serious matters. He reminded me Wayne might try to contest the will. Let him. I had evidence of his crime. Attempted murder would be his greatest obstacle in any legal challenge. The medical records alone would make his case impossible. Robert made notes in the margins, adding language that would make my intentions clear. Even if Wayne were acquitted on a technicality, the will would explain exactly why he was disinherited. I thought back on all the ways Robert had guided our family through legal complexities. He had managed Margaret's medical directives, helped set up education trusts for our grandchildren, and secured tax planning that preserved what we had. Now, he was ensuring that everything we built went to someone worthy. The will signing took place at 2 with Robert's secretary and paralegal as witnesses. I read each page carefully, making sure Wayne's name appeared only to confirm his exclusion from any inheritance. My signature this time felt different. Not a tired gesture of routine updates, but a strong statement of control over my legacy. The notary's seal made it final. Wayne would receive nothing. The will is now legally binding, Robert said as we shook hands. Wayne's attempt on my life had cost him everything he believed he would inherit. Walking to my car, I felt a deep satisfaction, like a man who had outsmarted the one who wished him dead. Wayne had gambled his future on one desperate dinner and lost it all. The weeks after were filled with legal work. Wayne and Emily were denied bail, deemed flight risks, and remained in custody. Robert and I worked closely with the prosecutor, reviewing evidence and preparing for trial. That morning, Loretta sat beside me in the courthouse, her face still pale after hearing about her brother's crime. I had told her only 3 days earlier, along with the news that she was now my sole heir. She cried for hours, mourning the brother she thought she knew. "Dad, I can't believe Wayne would do something so awful," she whispered. "People change, sweetheart. Sometimes they become strangers wearing familiar faces." The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Worn benches, harsh fluorescent lights, a handful of spectators, mostly reporters drawn by the case. Wayne and Emily sat with their court-appointed lawyers, both visibly worn from a month in custody. Wayne's suit hung loose on his frame. Emily kept her eyes fixed downward. The prosecutor, Jennifer Walsh, a sharp attorney in her 30s, guided me through my testimony. I recounted everything: Wayne's demands for money, his manipulative dinner invitation, and the poisoning that nearly killed me. Your Honor, my son invited me to dinner with the intent of poisoning me for his inheritance. On the stand, I was calm and steady. This was my chance to ensure justice. Medical reports confirmed the poison in my system. The defense claimed it was accidental, some issue with restaurant ingredients. But the evidence was undeniable: Wayne's financial desperation, his questions about my will, Emily's suspicious attention to my food and drink. After 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. Wayne Lane and Emily Lane, guilty of attempted first-degree murder. Wayne finally broke down. Dad, I didn't mean it. It was an accident. I looked at him, no longer my son, but a stranger. An accident? You asked about my will the day before you poisoned me. The judge sentenced them to 15 years each, with parole possible after 10. Wayne would be 77 if he lived to see release. Emily, 65. Their future's gone, destroyed by greed. Loretta and I left the courthouse together, the April sun warm on my face, promising renewal. What happens now, Dad? She asked. Now we live, sweetheart. We live with integrity, the way your mother would have wanted. Justice had been served. The betrayers would spend their remaining years in prison, while my loyal daughter would inherit all I had built. The natural order was restored. Wayne had lost more than wealth. He had lost his freedom, his future, and any right to call himself my son. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.